my privilege to introduce our next, I don't want to say speaker, it is more like this is an event that she is facilitating for our grace. So this is Manisha, whom I have known for probably a couple decades and watched her explode as a Sanskritist and grow and grow. So what I will say briefly is she is a mother, she is a psychic, and she is a wonderful Sanskritist, as well as an artist. And what she has done in a way that I don't know anyone else has done is combined Sanskrit with art. And she has done this with two great works. The first one, which I was forgetting about, was Shiva Mahimna Stotram. We had a little bit of that this morning. She did paintings years ago of Shiva Mahimna Stotram, where you can feel the energy of the verses at a whole other level through her paintings. And then she took on this amazing task of doing the same thing with the Yoga Sutras. So she has done two books with book 1 and book 2 of the Yoga Sutras, and it is lovely translation and really transformative artwork for every sutra. And she has been presenting this work at multiple universities in this country, and recently this past year also Benares Hindu University had her present. And those of us who knew Guruji in the early years, he always had stories about Benares Hindu University. So it is a wonderful thing that student of this ashram is coming back and giving to the world in this fashion. But she is going to make the Yoga Sutras come alive for us in a different way through her experience with both mantra and art.
Thank you, Indra. So, hi. So first of all, let's chant the 3 invocations, the same 3 that Shanta had. We can chant them together one time. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Namo Gurave Namaha. So I have, and you can switch to the other file. Actually, as I said, last year I presented about these, the paintings. I've finished the paintings for all 4 books of the Yoga Sutras. I finished them. I thought I had finished them last year when I spoke, but I actually finished them in November of last year. And I've been working on the process of writing book 3 in the past year. And Ken, a lot of what you had to say was very interesting, because what we're going to talk about here is like how to experience these sutras on a personal, intuitive level, that you're trying to engage the guru within, the teacher within, and working with them in a creative and intuitive way is a very powerful way to learn not just what the teacher within wants to teach you about the particular sutras or text, because you can do this with any text, but to develop the lines of communication that can then work in your life, in your daily life, taking the meditation off of the cushion into your daily life. You develop the lines of communication between your conscious mind and the teacher within. And art is or any creative intuitive process helps you do this. And it's a difficult thing, actually, because we want to get it. So we want to think like, okay, I got it, I listened, I got it now. But it's not like that. It's not like you listen once and then you have it. You have to keep listening. And then listen again, and then it tells you to do something that isn't what you expected or what you thought was right, but you have to, but following that. So that's the process that that we're going to encourage by doing something creative here. And Ken, I mentioned to you because the process of writing is not the same, but I would just encourage also for you later, as you work with whatever you draw today, the process of writing helps you kind of clarify to yourself what it is that you learned. And it's the two together is really a beautiful process. So one thing we're going to do is have an experience yourself of that. And the other thing is, when I arrived here, Anna said, "Oh, I can't wait, for your talk because you're going to talk about book 3, and you can go to the next slide. That's just from Samadhi Padaha. So the next few slides are just, this is an intuitive, creative way. It's a way of allowing the sutras to reach inside, and to the next one. This is book 1. These are all the paintings from book 1. The text teaches you, this is what I was saying, and the next slide, these are book 2. And then you go again to the next one. This is book 3. So we're going to, Anna said, I just can't get into book 3. Like, I just don't get it. And Andrea was there also, and she's like, yeah, me too. And this is the experience that many people have. Like, book 1, book 2, yeah, I get that. I can work with that. But, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so we will work some with the sutra. And then I'm going to put the sutra into the context, both in that way, sort of probably trying to sell book 3 a little bit to you, and also put the sutra into the context in which it belongs, and then we're going to work with the sutra again. That most of the time I study some before I actually do the paintings, but sometimes it's good to just see what comes up first. So you can go to the next slide, and this is Kaivalya Padaha. Next year. And then, so this is what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to start right now. Before you know anything, you can go to the next slide. Okay, this is just telling you. So as we get ready, we're going to chant. The sutra is a very simple sutra. It occurs pretty much, kind of in the middle of book 3. So it occurs in the section of sutras that many people find problematic about book 3, the ones of about the siddhis, the seemingly supernatural powers that can appear or be developed in the practice of yoga. It's not important that we're going to chant together for a few times, and then we're going to sit for a few minutes, and then you're going to draw something. So the most important thing, like this says, is not that you make a great work of art. It's not even that you draw exactly what it is that you see. It's not even necessarily actually important that you draw. The important thing is that you listen to whatever it is that comes up inside of you, and that you follow that. Because there is something inside every one of us that wants to move us forward on the path to knowing who we really are. And that is the benefit of engaging in this way, that thing inside of you is what's going to take you. Anything else, Sanskrit, art, even meditation, all of these are tools for accessing that. And that's what you want. So listen and follow. And whatever you end up with, it will be interesting because it comes from you. All right, so the next one. Here we go. So we're not going to talk a lot about the sutra right now. It's Hridaye Chitta Samvit. So Hridaye, on the heart, the locative singular for Hridaya. Chitta, everything going on inside. From, on the heart, know the chitta completely. Samvit, thoroughly know the chitta. What you're doing on the heart is, we'll talk about that more, but it's the application of the last 3 limbs of yoga, but for the purposes of this meditation on that space, that energetic space of the heart. So we'll chant it, maybe we'll chant it 10 times together. about that. And then we'll sit for a few minutes, and then I'll give you a cue to draw. Okay, I'll chant it once myself first, just to give you a tune, and then we can chant together. Hridaye chitta samvit, 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 Hridaye chitta samvit. Om. Okay, for a few minutes now, just draw something. Whatever comes up for you. Okay, finish up. You'll get a chance to do more with that or more again. So, okay, Anna, you can go to the next slide. So now I'm going to create some of the context for, this is potentially the cover for my book 3, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm going to start by addressing some of the thoughts about book 3, some of the issues that come up with book 3. And I'm going to do that by reading from the preface for this book. So the book begins with a preface, which is about my experience working with book 3, and then it goes to more of an introduction, each of the books for them, and the introduction is more like a straightforward introduction to the book, and we're going to do that now too. I'll read you some of this, and then go into the creating the whole context for the sutra that we just chanted. All right, so compared to books 1 and 2, not much is written about book 3. There's often very little commentary for many of the sutras, which can be explained in part by the fact that about 2/3 of the sutras in book 3 are about the siddhis, those seemingly supernatural powers that can appear or be developed as one advances in the practice of yoga. For example, Swami Satchidananda, in his translation, he says nothing about like a whole bunch of them, and he just says, only the ones that are useful for the yoga aspirant. Those are the only ones I'm going to talk about. So when I first turned my attention to book 3, I assumed that the reason so little was written about it was due to a kind of universal scorn for these siddhis. And even Patanjali warns against them, about getting caught up in them. So I assumed that the reason that translators and commentators say so little about much of book 3 was a certain degree of disdain. This isn't important or useful, so I'm not going to bother with it, and I'm not going to encourage you to bother with it either. I was wrong about that. I also thought that given the fact that I also felt somewhat dismissive of these siddhis, that I might be able to just zip through the paintings for book 3 in a year, although it had taken me 3 years to do all of the others, and it took me a lot more than 3 years to do these. So I was wrong about that one too. I wasn't doing it to learn how to fly, so, didn't seem like it would have to be a big deal. So it ended up taking me longer to complete the paintings for book 3 than it had to do any of the paintings for either of the previous books. So having been immersed in book 3 for a number of years, I would say that there's little written about book 3 because it's actually impossible to put into words the experience that it is trying to lead you toward. Book 3 is about the internal practice of yoga. So to dismiss it or to not pay attention to it is to miss the whole point. Because the whole point of yoga, the whole point of the practice of yoga is to change a relationship to all that stuff that's going on inside all the time. All of that like thinking and feeling and wanting and hoping and wishing and dreaming. That's the internal stuff, and the internal practice of yoga is designed to help you deal with that, and that is what book 3 is about. So when you engage with book 3, you might not fly or turn invisible or travel at the speed of thought, but you will encounter an experience of reality that challenges your understanding of what it means to occupy time and space here on earth. Even if you were to experience one or all of these remarkable manifestations, if you were to walk on water or see through walls, that would be incidental and even irrelevant in the light of the expansiveness of consciousness that results from the internal practice of yoga, and that is the source of these seemingly miraculous occurrences. This can't be written about. In the end, you have to experience it. It's like the initiation that the hero or heroine undergoes in a fairy tale or myth, in which they look into a pool of water or the box or the pages of a book or enter a foreign land. Only it's you. And what you see and experience is both completely ordinary and at the same time extraordinary, and eerily tailored exactly to you. It's actually not tailored to you, it is you, because that's your reflection you're seeing in the pond. When working with book 3, you're on the chopping block. And you are also the one doing the chopping. So you chop away at what you think of as yourself, sometimes fearful and confused, and sometimes full of wonder and love. And as you do this, what is revealed is something far more remarkable than anything you imagined, something far more remarkable than flying or being invisible or being able to enter the body of another. What is it? I don't know what to call it, but it is deep and absorbing and far beyond beautiful, because it incorporates what we think of as beautiful with what we think of as repulsive and terrifying, all one breathtaking, magnificent whole. It is you, the distinct individual, and it is all of everything, which it turns out is also you. This could be compared to the way that each facet of a hologram is a distinct part of the picture, and it contains the entire image. It is full-on awareness of being, so full of love and gratitude and yes, that you want to dissolve into a remembered joy so expansive that it includes what appears to be sorrow. Then it seems like you've lost it, even though that you know it's still there. Could you have imagined it? Feelings of confusion and failure crowd into the picture. That, too, it turns out, is part of it, just as much as the revelatory parts. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the name of the book is, oh no, that one, the one that you were there. So this is book 3. So this gives you, now we're going to do the, although it's not all on it's, some of it's missing. You have to make it smaller. Yeah. So now we're going to go through and sort of try to understand the basic structure of book 3. The name of book 3 is Vibhuti Padaha. So it's often, Vibhuti is often translated as powers or accomplishments, but which are acceptable translations. But V can be an intensifier, and Bu is to be. So I prefer to think of it as like an intensified or remarkable way of being. Or Dr. Sharma translated it as remarkable manifestations, or I like remarkable manifestations. I think he translated it as, let's see, glorious manifestations, special manifestations, pervasive glory. So the siddhis are the powers, but vibhuti is like that remarkable, expansive way of being that the powers hint at, but they're signposts of, but they're really not the point. So book 3 begins. You can see that there's one section that's similar, then there's this section of the siddhis, and then it ends again. So you can go to the next slide. Book 3 begins where book 2 left off. Halfway through book 2, the 8 limbs of yoga were introduced, and then the rest of book 2 deals with the first 5 of them. So that would be yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and pratyahara. So these kind of go increasingly inward. Yama is like how we interact with the outside world. Niyama is what supports those the correct way of interacting with the outside world. Asana is what you physically do with your body. You sit. Pranayama is also something physically with your body, but on a more subtle level. It's the breath. And pratyahara, again, getting even more subtle, dealing with the organs of sense perception. So these are the external physical limbs. So you can go to the next slide. These are the first few sutras, the paintings for the first few sutras of book 3. You can go to the next one. So the last 3 limbs of yoga they begin by giving you a meditation practice, basically. It's dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. They address the internal experience and present the process of going inward by focusing the mind. And Patanjali is basically giving you a meditation technique at the beginning. Unlike, for example, what is it? What were you saying? Not awareness. What's the word that's often used for meditation? Mindfulness. So mindfulness, you just sit and whatever comes up, you notice. This is not the technique that Patanjali is suggesting. He is telling you, you pick a point, you keep your attention, you attach your attention to that point, and as you keep your attention focused on the point and the attention remains on that point, you then enter the state of dhyana, meditation, and as the meditation continues, you then enter the state of samadhi, which, so where it all disappears, and you experience a sense of oneness with the focus of meditation. So he begins by giving you the meditation technique that you're going to follow. Okay, the next slide. And then you can go on. Then he gives you a technical term, sanyama, for the application of these 3 limbs as one thing. So a lot of the rest of the book is about what happens when you apply the last 3 limbs of yoga as one thing to whatever. When you pick a focus, so rather than say, pick a focus, keep your attention on that focus until you move into meditation and continue meditating until you move into samadhi, rather than say that each time, he uses the term sanyama. And that's what, those are the paintings for sanyama. Okay, go to the next one. These are more of those sutras that are talking about it being the internal practice, and you can keep going. Then he introduces a very interesting and a very deep and powerful series of sutras about the parinamas, the changes, how the mind of the meditator changes. That there are, and he identifies 3 particular transformations that the mind of the meditator goes through in the process of meditation. Where first there's the nirodha parinama, where the control parinama, where there's the control of attention, and as you wear those grooves deeper, that's the idea. You keep this practice of meditation going, and you wear the grooves deeper. You develop this habit of control of the chitta, of all that stuff going on inside, and then the samadhi parinama of being able to enter that state of samadhi, and ekagrata parinama of the one-pointedness. So he identifies them as 3 separate, you can go to the next slide. Let's see what I say. So 3 separate changes that transform the heart and mind of the meditator through the process of meditation. They actually evolve together, each generating the other in this like ongoing loop of bringing you inward into the state of one-pointedness. Nirodha parinama is a change that happens as we develop the ability to control our attention, as it becomes a calm flow. The tendency towards distracted attention declines, and the mind's nascent potential for one-pointedness arises, drawing the meditator to an experience of absorption and stillness. That's the samadhi parinama. But even in samadhi parinama, the mind still continues, but what's happening is that the thoughts are increasingly similar, and that's the ekagrata parinama. But these keep developing. It's like it's like that spiraling effect where they keep but this is the process that he identifies that changes the mind of the meditator. So you can go to the next one. The next sutras say that they introduce the thinking that then leads to the siddhis. So the first way I heard this explained was that it's all prakriti, which is true. That's an important aspect of it. And that if you can change the mind in this way, you can change anything, and that leads the way to the siddhis. But I would say it's more complicated than that. I would say that what he's really saying is that the mind of the meditator, that the mind having been changed in this way, reality is perceived differently. And reality is perceived, we might say, energetically. They describe energetically as like the gunas, but that it's all one thing. It's all one thing kind of vibrating. And that, for the one who's mastered this, they're then able to manipulate it in different ways. So, and then this opens the door to those siddhis, the special powers. This is how this happens. So that brings up the question of like the question that Anna was bringing up, like, well, okay, but you're like, I'm not going to like meditate on something and then fly. That's not going to happen. The fact is that like being in a human body, most of the time you don't fly. It's the siddhis. The point of the siddhis is to transform your experience of reality so that increasingly you start to experience it as this fluid thing. And that they have a tendency to kind of come up or not come up in their own way. as you work with this material, not necessarily in the exact way that it says that they're going to come up, but the siddhis come up that are appropriate for you, that like flip your brain and have you going, oh, wait, what? What was that? Like, and the real siddhi is always you. You're the siddhi. The fact that you exist, the fact that you're like a being here on earth doing things. The idea, too, that these are somehow special powers, what really happens as you work with this material, it's all a power. Like, why can we even see? That's amazing, you know, or smell. Like there are powers everywhere all the time. The experience of Book 3 is experiencing like the vastness of being and of life and the fluidity of all of it. And the fact that we get to be in it as beings. Wow. You know? That's what Book 3 is about. And it doesn't matter if you do exactly, like if you do, all of the siddhis are structured in this, they present the dharana, this is what you focus on, and you're going to have the meditation and samadhi, and then this is what happens. There is value in working with each one of these, not because you're necessarily going to rise above the thorns. Although I really like the fact that kantaka, the word for thorn, actually means problems as well. So I don't usually need to rise above thorns in my life, but there's a lot of problems I need some help rising over. Like that, it's like you're not, the idea that these are exactly what they say they are, but the Shiva Mahimna Stotram, I wasn't going to finish those paintings at one point, and I said to Shanta, I really don't like the Shiva Mahimna Stotram. I told Dr. Sharma I wanted to work in it, but I don't like it. It's this patriarchal blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh no, you've got that all wrong. The Shiva Mahimna Stotram is not what it's about. We're not going to stop doing grammar. We're just going to chant the Shiva Mahimna Stotram. And I started chanting it every day, and he was right. None of this is about just what it says it's about. It's all about who knows what. And that's Book 3 is, so the way, when we get to the city, so you can go to the next one. This introduces the cities. So I painted the cities as a group, most of the cities. There's a few others. I had to make some technical decisions because of space and all that kind of thing. So there are actually two paintings. One is a blue sky, and then over it, there's really literally a film of this plastic duralar, on which there's a painting that's in acrylic and then, what's it called? Gouache, egg tempera, too. But each of so the white lines represent sattva, the red swirling lines are rajas, and the black is tamas. And the idea is that the sattvic, each of the meditation process creates this, the triangle for sanyama. It creates this window in the fabric of material reality that shows you the expansiveness that is possible. And I would say, that for the advanced yogi, they identify with the sky, and the rest of it's all just sort of interesting. And for those of us who are less advanced, we have a tendency to identify with, material reality. And then the opening happens, and we're like, oh, wow, wait, that's right. I forgot, So you can go to the next slide. Into the next. So I just have some slides to show you how each one then has images on it that are representative of the particular siddhi. You can keep going through it like that. Okay, that. Yep. And then we get to the last ones. So the last ones, Patanjali returns to his big theme, which is knowing the difference between the self, Purusha, and Prakriti, material reality, and identification with Purusha. And I really like these paintings. I feel like they came from some source that I'm still listening to. But to go back to would you go back to the big one, the one that shows them all? This is the sutra that we chanted is this one, Hridaye Chitta Samvit. So the ones that precede it, they go through, the knowledge of the past and future, the ability to know the meaning of all sounds, knowing the samskaras, being able to tell what somebody else is thinking, knowing the time of death, being able to turn invisible. This is on the Brahma Viharas, so then the power that comes from that and the strength, the ability to see what's hidden and distant, on the sun, on the moon, then it's on the body. They each have the power over hunger and thirst, stability. This is a Siddhi Darshanam. As we get towards here, they start, so you can see these seem more like just powers. But once around here, once you get to like around Siddhi Darshanam, the audience basically, being seen by a power, a siddha, or by intuition, you can have all of them. Hridaye Chitta Samvit. You can see that it leads to this one that looks different. This one is about knowledge of Purusha. So what's important to know about the sutra that we chanted is that the whole point of this practice is to know the difference between, all that stuff that usually goes on inside, which is identified as chitta, and the self, Purusha. So as has been said, and as somebody may, if you want to know the ultimate reality, you first have to know yourself. Like this step before being able to know Purusha is being able to identify all that other stuff that's not Purusha. And that's what Hridaye Chitta Samvit is about. Like, so in this system, the heart is the seat of chitta, not the brain. We think of the brain as more the seat of thinking and even feeling and all that. But here it's the heart. So it's meditation on that space of the heart. And whether it's the heart chakra or it doesn't really matter. It's on that energetic space will reveal in this system. The goal of it is to reveal, for you to truly know all of that, all that meanness. And then from knowing all that meanness, the door opens to know that which is knowing all that meanness, which is the self. So that gives you the context of the sutra that we're going to chant again and draw again. Does anybody have any questions before we chant again and draw again? Yes?
Thank you. So Guruji was always one to acknowledge the powers. There was no question in his mind that if you plant the seed and give it water and good soil, the seed will grow and it will get bigger and bigger, and you'll see it and you'll experience it. And he used to talk about the powers not to get too involved with them. So he would say, and he made beautiful commentary on this many times, and this is from the San Francisco point of view, he would say, if you're driving to Los Angeles, and you've been driving 3 hours, and you see a sign that says New York 3 hours ahead, you know you've gotten on the wrong path. Mm-hmm. You made a wrong turn somewhere along the way. And again, if you see a sign after driving for a few hours that Los Angeles is an hour and a half ahead, you know that you're on the right path.
Right path.
And he would say, you don't need to get out where you see that sign that says Los Angeles an hour and a half ahead. You just know that you're on the right path. It's normal.
Right.
When you're in the path of meditation. But he made that really clear, and he was really clear about that these powers will come.
Right.
But don't get too involved with them because they will distract you.
Right, well, they come and they go, too.
Yes.
They come and they go on their own,
But he would say don't get too involved with them because they will distract you.
Right. I would agree. You don't want to, there's no point in getting involved in them. The powers aren't the point. The point is the expansion of consciousness that, like, and I would say that leads that leads to them. But yeah,
I just wanted to give his
take
point
on
of view. Yeah.
I think sometimes they're also called siddhi, can also be translated as attainment. And I think a lot of times you enter yoga or that spiritual path because, I don't know, something about our world where there's so much pressure on attainment, whether it's money or status or that kind of thing. And at first, like when you come across the thinking that like, well, this is how you know that you're advancing in the practice of yoga, you're like, oh, really? Like this, I like whether or not I can like do this or that. And it, just like everything in the practice, it's not, it's about you, it flipping you on the head and getting attached to any of it, as Guruji said, is really missing the point. Because it's about like pushing the boundaries of what you understand yourself and life to be. Okay, who had a question?
I had a question, yeah. So I wanted to ask about the Siddhi Shakti, And so, like, there is a book like called The Little Prince, and that they say that what is important is invisible to the eye, but it is in the heart. So all of us have the Siddhi Shakti. We're able to perceive things, like, but what about like the abuse of Siddhi? Like, I remember when I was in India, when I was like 10 years old, someone came knocking at the door and said that he's a meditating monk from the Himalayas, and he told my mom, write your best friend's name. And my mom wrote her best friend's name in the balcony, and he said the alphabet. He said R-U-K-A-M-A-N-I, and I was shocked. So he obviously had the psychic powers, and then he said, your husband will pass away at 75. So since then, it's been so difficult for me because I like keep thinking about my dad passing away. And I just think that how can us as meditators or people we have these psychic powers or empaths, block other people with these like siddhi shaktis?
Wow, I don't know how to answer that question. I have to say I'm really sorry to hear that happened to you. And as somebody who works as a psychic, that seems like a terrible abuse and a terrible misuse of ability. And also, and I would also add that even people who are right about something aren't right about everything. So, and that's, but I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to that one? That's a really hard one. Indra?
This is not so much an answer. I would just say one thing that Guruji said many years ago, that if you meditate, you can transcend your astrology. So that is one thing. But the other thing I want to say is that this is such a profoundly challenging topic, and I think you've done a brilliant job of framing it.
Thank you.
As in a non-superficial way. And I am going to either read your book or re-listen to this to kind of take it in more deeply. Because I think for most of us who've worked with the Yoga Sutras in any fashion, this is the challenging chapter.
Yeah. And
I think the way you're interpreting it makes it more accessible, and that's a gift.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my hope. That's my hope. Oh, okay. Somebody else had a question. And then we'll chant and draw again. And then, yeah. But I'm glad to hear that, Indra, because it's because this book is so powerful and important, and the practice, like again, that internal practice, that's it. That's the practice of yoga. Yes.
Yeah. I have a question that you said siddhis. So how a person will understand that he got a siddhis and it is a siddhi?
What? How
a person will know that this is a siddhi and I have got it the siddhi?
Oh, well, so first of all, I think you're always kind of treading on problematic ground when you think, I have got a siddhi. Because the minute you think you have it, it's probably going to go. It's like, that's not, in my understanding of it, there is another understanding of it in which you try to develop these particular, and that is not my approach, not what I would recommend, not what I think is a worthwhile way of working with the material at all. And I would say that anything that happens, there are things that happen to you in the process of engaging with this material that like shake you up and bend your mind. And they may or may not be exactly the things that are written in there, but you know it when it happens. It's not at all subtle. And the point is to shake you up a bit. I mean, so for example, the very first one is knowing the past and future. Like, that's what I do for a living. So that's not necessarily something that I think of, that I can say, well, whatever. I suppose I was born with that one. But even with that, like, I can never just sit down in front of a client and go, oh yeah, well, I'm going to know, whatever. It's not going to be like that. If I'm like that, I won't be able to there's even with those that might seem more straightforward, or that you might have, like, sometimes too you just get a bit of a taste of one of them, but that's enough for you. You know what I mean? Towards the end, so you can see also that how there's more color that comes in at the end. You want to go to through to the last, these slides. So these last ones, the red and the orange one, are the Indriya Jaya, which is like control of the mastery of the organs of sense perception. The experiences that I had working with those sutras was mind-blowing. Like, I did not become an Indriya Jaya. I could not travel at the speed of thought, which is what the next one says happened, except for that. Like, what it's about, that Indriya Jaya, is not so much about mastering the indriyas, the organs of sense perception, but of not being bossed around by them, the way that we are all the time, of shifting your relationship. And just the beginning of doing that changes you. It changes you so that you understand reality differently. And you'll have these experiences of what life is. Even just a moment of it shifts something. And that, I think there are, it's important to remember always that the real siddhi is, the real point is to open up your perception of reality so that you identify with this bigger experience of who and what you are, because the feeling of that is better than anything.
But sometimes some people get very mysterious experience by themselves, and maybe they cannot talk with anybody or say anything. Now in this case, what should they do?
That they can't talk with anybody or say anything about it?
Yeah, because if they say those things, maybe people won't believe, or their experience are so different than common person.
Yeah.
So it is tough to even tell anybody.
Yeah.
Or then what the condition should be in that person?
I mean, I think that those are the kinds of experiences that push one on a spiritual path, or to find your teacher. So when I started working with Book 3, also, like, this addresses one of the things that you were saying too, Anna, which is like, Book 1 and Book 2, okay, Book 1, I was just jumping into Book 2 practice, I thought I understood that. When I decided that I would continue working with Book 3, I thought, like, this is above my pay grade, like, I'm not, like, flying, And relationship to the guru is what changed. I thought, this is not material, I am going to go tromping in alone. So there wasn't like a living person next to me for me to like change my relationship with. There's that listening to the guru within, that changed, but also how I related to the external guru, such that I had the only thing I could say to a person like that is like, yeah, you don't go into this. I personally did not go into this material without like holding firm to the teacher.
Now I have more questions about you. You are all this painting in last page. They are really mathematical, biological, and everything is there. So do you think about it any time, or thinking that you painted these paintings?
Do I think that I painted these paintings? That's a very good question. Yes and no, yeah. I mean, that's the paradox of all of it. Like I painted them, but also something painted them. I painted it's so funny, because I'm the one mixing the paint. I'm the one putting it on the canvas. I'm the one, but I'm also the one.
What my question is that all shapes has a deep meaning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Each shape has very deep meaning by mathematically, everything in those last page.
Right.
There is everything.
Right.
So do you understand those meanings?
I don't understand them completely. I don't understand these paintings completely.
I see. That was my question, that understanding everything, did you paint this painting, or
Understanding some of it, I painted them. Understanding all of it, I would never, I know. I'm still learning from these paintings.
Okay, so I have then another next question is, which one you are understanding these paintings by heart?
Which one? Understanding these paintings by heart. I'm not really which of these? I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know how to answer that question. Which one do I respond to the most? Okay. I'll have to think about that one and get back to you.
Not to answer your question, but I think what Manisha has experienced in drawing them is she didn't necessarily know everything about it, but this was what coming through her.
And some of them take study too.
That helped put the shapes on the page, even though she might not have understood completely why or how, but she was drawn to doing the shapes the way that they are there.
And drawn to doing the color. That's right. And drawn to doing the colors. And also sometimes, like some of them took research and thought. So it's not like, I just like let it all flow through me.
I think the lady in the very back had a question.
Yeah.
Way back.
Right. And then we want to have time to draw still. So, again, to chant and draw. Is it okay if we go a few minutes over so everybody has a chance to draw? Okay. I have also up here, I have some copies of book 1 and book 2, and I have some of the mock-ups of what I've done so far with book 3 in folders. So you can come up and look more closely at some of the paintings and some of the text for the different paintings too.
Hi there.
Hi.
A combination question and comment. Sometimes I would imagine when you're working and information comes to you, sometimes it may not be understood until hindsight.
Right.
Right. And I was just wanting to ask if you have a way of holding that information that feels the unknown, uncertain. Maybe it is disturbing information, as if maybe you have a vision or an insight of somebody's passing that's close to you, or something more difficult or as difficult. And also incorporating how it's so difficult to talk about this to most people. So it's unknown, it's uncertain, it's not proven. There's not a good arena to discuss it. I just would like to hear your feedback.
So you're
on
talking
that.
less about the paintings than and more about stuff as a psychic. Is that correct? Or
Yes,
is it painting?
and I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it kind of like a channeling into your work? that-
Oh, so the channeling into my work is, so first of all, I'll answer as a psychic in terms of if something comes up that's disturbing information, my experience is that you have to find a way to say it. But I have many, many years of working as a psychic, and learning how to say things is important. Learning, there's many different ways of saying something. Then channeling, or that process of channeling in painting. So a lot of times the process of working like this, much like the process of listening to that voice within, is hearing something and thinking either like, I don't want to do that, or that can't be right, or no, that's too much work, or whatever, or I'm afraid, or I can't, and then doing it. Like what the paintings, do you want to go through, Anna, let's go through a little, just go. So I was also going to show, you can keep going. No, forward. You're going backwards, right? Right. Okay. So this is the painting for Hridaya Chitta Samvit that I did because it fits into the whole thing. But go to the next one. I also did a test for Hridaya Chitta Samvit. Prior to doing the big thing, I was testing materials, and the sutra that I chose to work with, Hridaya Chitta Samvit, the sutra I worked with just to try out some materials, this is another painting for that same one. And to the next one, and then this one, and then this one is recent, and then go on, and this, and then keep going, that, and then this is a drawing from July 7th of this year. Keep going. And here we go again. And then you see this in the context, and don't stay on this page because I don't want you guys to read all my notes to myself, worrying about everything. And and then here you go. This is the here's what the paint. This is how big they are. Like when I was doing it, I thought, is this just too weird? Like this is really weird. And then, but I did it because that's what I got the message to do. And then at one point, as I was finishing it up, at one point I went into my studio and suddenly it hit me. I thought like, and this answers your question somewhat about like this, I thought like, I don't understand this painting, but this is book 3. And why would I understand it? You know, like, of course I don't understand it. But this is it. So does that answer your question somewhat? The thing is really building certainly in the process of painting, building the lines of communication between yourself and that voice within, and going to that place of following it, of trusting it, even when you think what it's telling you to do could not be more wrong. That's the thing that then like shifts your perspective of all of it in ways that you don't even understand. Okay, go ahead. You want to hand it to Indra? And then we'll chant and paint again.
This is just a tiny quote from Tolkien that I may not remember correctly, but one of the elves is talking about the power of how the hobbits are helping. And he says, who of the wise would have expected it? And then the next line is, but if they were wise, they should have known not to expect it.
Exactly. Okay, so let's chant again, Hridaya Chitta Samvit, and we'll chant it, we'll do it again 10 times. I think I might have only done it 9 times before, but I'll do it 10 times this time. And then you can either work on the drawing that you already did or do another one. there's more paper, and there's more art supplies too that you can use. And again, I'll chant it first to just set the tone, and then we'll do it together 10 times. Om Hridaye Chitta Samvit 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 Om. Whenever you feel ready. Maybe I see that a number of you have finished, so maybe we can wrap it up. You can always do more, and I would encourage you to, in the past year as I've been working on the writing, it's not as much fun as painting, not as having the time to paint, but it would be interesting for you to also, it's an interesting process to try to then also put into words what your experience of the working with the sutra, of your drawing, whatever it is, and it's an ongoing process. So I was thinking something about the organ. For somebody that came up, and this is a little. When I said something about the organs of sense perception, it's like, if you think of, if you believe that there is a self that exists beyond death, that self will also perceive, but they won't perceive like we perceive in ways that are particular to human perception, the way the eye, like ear or whatever. How will that self see or hear? Like that's that kind of like, whoa, wait a second, what does it mean to perceive kind of thing? That book 3 encourages you. It's that mind-bending kind of quality that doesn't all have to be about experiencing the exact city, but about like letting yourself let go of all of the things that you take for granted in your understanding of what it means to occupy time and space as a being. So I hope I've sold book 3 to more than just Indra, because it's really worth it. And I guess I'm supposed to end with like Om Shanti, right? Okay. What? Yeah, all of us together. Okay, together. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.